So welcome back to another episode of the Wild Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Finnig. I'm so happy you're here with me today. My guest today is Natalie Dattilo, and she is a clinical and health psychologist. And we met through our mutual love of yoga and MindBody Medicine, and we just relate so much. Her coming from the psychology side, me coming from the yoga therapy side. So we can really just blend and mesh and understand both sides and appreciate both sides. So I really love that. So I'm excited for her to share today about self-care and the importance of that. She calls it radical self-care, which I love. And also just about mental health resilience and therapy in general and what to expect when you're working with a therapist. So I'm excited for her to share. But before we dive in, if you're listening but you're cooking, you're walking, you're commuting, whatever you're doing, I always include links to anything we discuss in our show notes at alyssafinnig.com/podcast. So just know that you won't miss anything. You can go to that website and you'll be able to access everything we talk about. But before I really dive in, this episode is sponsored by Embark Yoga and Holistic Health, an urban sanctuary in the heart of Indianapolis, offering yoga classes, massage therapy, and holistic practices rooted in connecting the innate wisdom of the body with the mind to help you find true healing. Through dynamic movement, deep relaxation, natural remedies, and holistic self-care, Embark's team of wellness professionals can help you remain healthy as you age, stay sane while managing stress, and feel good every day of your life. So go to embarkyoga.com to learn more. And I won't make you wait any longer. Natalie, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Alyssa. I'm so glad to be here and joining you on your podcast. And we've worked together for a while now, and I do think our expertise and interests really complement one another really well. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, great. So not only is Natalie a clinical psychologist, but she's also a dear friend because of this mutual love of psychology and blended with, Western psychology, blended with Eastern therapies and things like that. I love that, and that we can talk about that and share that and understand each other. So I always love to talk about people's journeys and their stories of how they got where they are. And as a clinical psychologist, you obviously have like the academia part, and then, but you have a holistic mind as well, and you like to blend that. So tell me a little bit about your journey and your story.
Okay, so thanks. So I'm a clinical and health psychologist. I got my doctorate from the University of Florida. I've always loved psychology. I've always been very curious about why people do what they do. So it was a natural fit for me. As a practitioner of psychology, I love working with people to help them better understand why they do what they do and then make changes in their lives so that they can be happy and healthy and productive. And I've been in practice now for over 10 years. I've worked in academic medical settings. I've worked in private practice. I've done consulting for companies and getting ready to start a new job at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. I'll be the director of psychology there. I've got a lot of exciting projects that we're going to try and do while we're out there. But as a holistic practitioner, as somebody that sort of embodies personally a very mind-body approach to life, exercise has always been a big part of what I do to maintain a body-mind connection. Whether that's running or yoga or Pilates or dancing, it's a form of meditation for me. So I really try to spend that time going inward, appreciating my body and its abilities and things like that. So, and then what stems from that is also other health practices like getting enough sleep, making sure I'm hydrating, making sure that I'm feeding my body well, that sort of thing. So knowing that all of those are connected, it's a big part of who I am and what I like to share with the folks that I work with as well.
And sleep is so important. I talk to lots of clients about, and even myself, I've struggled with that, of just really needing to make sure that your sleep, some of those foundational practices of taking care of yourself are, just taken care of.
Right.
And
managing our resources and our energy to be in the position to take better care of ourselves and everybody else.
Exactly. So, you you're excited about this new position, and you talked about your vision before with me. What's your vision or your hope in and what like your passions of working with more of the integration of the mind and body in the field of psychology?
Well, I love that we've talked about this, and I love that I'm going to be able to focus on integrative care in an institution like that, because I really think that's very much cutting edge of the field. I think we're definitely moving towards a more integrative approach, whether that's mind and body, or also integrating more with sort of primary care, making sure that mental health is also considered a primary care practice and having that be accessible to people. So I'll be in a position to help future psychologists and psychiatry residents better understand the mind-body medicine aspect, the idea that emotional symptoms are going to show up in our body, and we need to be able to pay attention to that and address those as often as possible, and have making sure that we're accessible to folks who need the treatment.
Well, and when we first met, you were actually working at Indiana University, and I know it's still a passion of yours, but really the healthcare professional, especially physician burnout, and that is really top of mind. And so, share with our audience a little bit about why you think that is really important to address.
It is a main issue these days. We're hearing a lot about physician and also healthcare professionals in general are experiencing tremendous amount of burnout right now. There's probably lots of reasons for that, but the one that concerns me the most is self-care. So making sure that as a healer, as a helper, as somebody that's responsible for taking care of others, that we make sure we're taking care of ourselves first.
Sure.
And having that be not a luxury, that's a necessity. It's the thing that enables us to do our job. So yes, the term that I use is radical self-care. It needs to be sort of an intentional, daily, like non-negotiable practice. And we can talk about all the different aspects of self-care because it's going to be different for different people. And one of the first things you're going to want to do is pay attention. Pay attention to yourself. Stop. Listen. What needs are being met? What needs aren't being met? And then work to address those as best you can.
Yeah, and I know you have almost daily practice of meditation and exercise. Talk about what your self-care looks like. And I know life gets in the way and it can change and things like that, but just kind of overview, just as an example.
Sure. I mean, there's things that I do that are pretty standard that I in my mind, I'm doing as an intentional, like, this is to take better care of myself. This is good for me and I want to do that. I know it's going to make me feel better. But it's going to be different for everybody, and it's different day to day. It sort of depends on what's going on, how what sort of burdens and stress or deadlines are you up against, and that changes. Relationships can influence how well we're able to take care of ourselves, and those are constantly changing. So we're attending to a lot of things all at the same time. So the best self-care practice that I could recommend that I do for myself is meditation or mindfulness. It's staying as present and focused in the moment as you can to better assess the needs of the situation that you're currently in and sort of monitor it as it unfolds. It's also being very kind to yourself. I think that's a big part of self-care that we overlook because it doesn't feel as active. It doesn't feel like we're doing something. I don't think we always have to do something to take care of ourselves. Sometimes it's just a matter of slowing down, taking a breath, just assessing the situation. What do you need? What don't you need? And then responding to those needs in kind.
I completely agree because we're often way too hard on ourselves, and I know this is true for me. We can get caught up in the flurry of things, and if I don't have my meditation practice, I can totally tell that it did not take the time to ground myself in the morning and how it affects my day. And even if I'm only meditating maybe 5 of the 7 days of a week, it really has a profound effect on every other day and my breathing practice as well. But those grounding techniques are very essential because life in general is more of this. In Ayurvedic medicine, it's the vata, dosha, and characteristics of this like air and spacey and constant busy and doing and doing and doing. So if we take those time to ground ourselves, whether it's meditation practice, which, we're big proponents of, you had researched mindfulness before. And I know that's a big component, but or even being in nature, just having some type of grounding in our daily life and centering, whether it's 10 minutes or something else that we do, is really important.
We're so busy. I think it's so important to just push the pause button regularly and say, how am I doing right now?
And reprioritize so that, like we're number one, and not in a selfish way,
Right.
but in that so that we can give more.
Absolutely. It's non-negotiable, right? The idea of rest and recharging your batteries and whatever works for you, knowing yourself well enough to know what's going to work for me. So the idea of grounding or being in nature is something that I enjoy doing. It's not something that I feel I need every day,
Sure.
as much as some of the other things that I do routinely do. But it's one of those things like the other day, I'm like, I want to be outside right now.
Yes.
And I could tell that that's what my body needed. And so that's what I did.
A lot of people feel like self-care is selfish rather than the sanity that it does bring. And I always tell people you can give more fully when you actually take care of yourself. But a lot of times it's the foundational things. If it's like, well, you need to exercise 30 minutes a day, which you do. But if you don't have any energy and you're struggling and you're at the burnout phase and you have adrenal fatigue and just pure exhaustion and things like that may not be what you need right now. Maybe you do need that rest and find some more clarity and guidance. And maybe you just need to sleep well first, because we already know there's, I don't know the statistic right now off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure over 75% of Americans have issues with sleep, whether they can't go to sleep for insomnia issues, waking up in the middle of the night, waking up not feeling rested.
Yes.
I've struggled with that myself. And in fact, this morning, I joked with you about that's what I'm feeling today. And I felt like I slept through the night. And I know I've done some studies with Dr. Taroni Lodog, as she's an integrative physician. I really love her. And she works a lot with herbs and just in women's health. But I remember her saying, we need rest. Even beasts of burden have rest. They don't work one day a week. And we fill our time with that 1 or 2 days off with running errands, running kids everywhere, doing whatever, instead of, because we feel guilty for, we can do active rest and be out hiking or in the garden, or we can be laying on the couch or something like that. But actually resting and not having a to-do list. And that's such a hard concept. But, even back to different religions and things like that. Saturday is a Sabbath, or, in the Jewish religion, then Sunday in the Christian religion. It's there's supposed to be actual days of rest and with your family and with your loved ones. But it's went out the window.
Rest can be a 4-letter word. It's one of those things that it somehow is connected to inactivity or unproductive or even lazy. And I think maybe, if that's not a word that resonates with you well, then maybe a word like reconnect. So on those days where you're, not running around, has nothing to do with that, but it's reconnecting with yourself or reconnecting with nature, or reconnecting with loved ones. I think that was maybe even the original point of having those days off.
Yeah, it was.
Was not to lay in bed all day.
Exactly, yeah.
But it was to reconnect or recharge.
Yes, because
yourself.
Oftentimes people think you're just supposed to lay in bed or on the couch. And if you really feel like you need a nap, sure. But that's why, I love being in nature and connect with horses and things like that.
And that type of rest might be backfiring on you because you're so inactive. It's a matter of being more intentional about how you are choosing to recharge your batteries.
Exactly. So you have to, and that's why I talk about active rest. You can feel just as calm and replenished by being in nature or by gardening in your backyard or doing something active, by exercising, but maybe not to the point of exhaustion, especially if you're dealing with adrenal fatigue.
Just go step outside and breathe the fresh air or
without
take
an
in
agenda.
the sun. And I think what makes the difference, and I think sometimes this is the important part, is bringing a sense of intention. I'm doing this because I'm choosing to do this activity or inactivity because it's good for me. So when people ask me, what is self-care? I hear that a lot and I don't know what it is. There's actually so many dimensions of that and it's probably not specific enough. But what I tell people in general is this good for you? When you know all that, the list of things that are good for you, it would be good for me if I did this, or it would be good to do this, or it's good for me to do this. Those tend to be self-care activities.
Sure.
Sometimes we don't do those things, even though we know we should. But when you're
Mhm.
talking to yourself, it'd be like, it'd be good for me to do that. That's self-care. The other one that you mentioned too was boundaries. So being able to say no. We're not very good at saying no, mostly because we just haven't had a lot of practice.
Sure.
We feel it, but having that conversation with another person brings up all sorts of stuff.
Mhm.
So practice saying no and doing it in a way that feels right to you or resonates with you. I simply can't say yes to that, or I've already made other commitments. I've already made other plans, and I want to honor those.
Mhm.
Or just being careful about what you say yes to.
Mhm.
Your best yes, that idea. Like, yes, that excites me. That idea is important. That's something that I would love to do. So,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah. Well, and we think that, okay, we're going to do this and that's going to be how it is. Well, life gets in the way. And I find myself, I have to constantly reassess what I say no to so that I have the time to do the things I want
Love
and
the
to take care
mouse.
of myself.
Yeah.
And then even like the last couple weeks, I'm like, oh, I haven't had a day off. Not by design, just happened to. And one of my students, and I have a small group yoga therapy program at Embark, and one of my students on Monday, she said, I think it's technology. Because we used to have those paper calendars where you'd see your whole week and month, and now you really just see your day when you're using your phone. And I said, that is a really great point, because that's how you end up getting overfilled sometimes, because you're just looking at, oh, that day's open, but you don't realize that weekend was full of training or going out of town or something like that, and then suddenly you don't have a day off. And that happens to me, and I have to constantly reassess.
It's a very practical consideration. Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about because we've personally had conversations of psychiatry, psychology. You have lots of therapists, counselors, and things like that. And because mental health, health in general, but it's sometimes this thing that has the stigma, and to help people figure out, how to navigate if they're really are like, I really do need some assistance with this. What are some strategies or some recommendations you might have when seeking out providers? Because there's so many different therapies that people offer, and different levels of education. And it's not even, it is somewhat that, but just understanding the different therapies and how they can be helpful.
I'd love to talk to you about that. I don't know if we in my field have done a really good job of informing and educating consumers about what to expect or how to go about finding a mental health practitioner or somebody who specializes in mind-body health, how to access that. And it's not unlike the way you might access, you're looking for a dentist, or you're looking for a family physician, or, one of the first things that you might do in a really practical sense is check your insurance policy.
Sure.
So what does your insurance policy cover in terms of mental health benefits? It's usually where I recommend people will start. Get some information there. You want to be able to budget for the meetings, making sure that you're not adding to your level of stress because you're overspending for something. But it is an investment, and it's probably an investment worth making. You just want to make an informed decision. So you'll want to check with your insurance policy, figure out what your mental health benefits are, figure out if there's co-insurance, so copay or deductible. You also want to find out who's in network, depending on what level of expertise. Different providers are going to be paneled with different insurance companies. So it's just good to ask those questions up front. Or if you're doing an online search and you seem to have found a website or somebody's profile that you like, you seem to connect with what they're offering, you could just ask them as well. So one of the first questions you're going to want to ask is, do you take my insurance? And if not, how much is your out-of-pocket fee? That sort of thing. So some practical considerations, also things like availability. Like, what is your availability? What are you willing to, make room for in your life? So do you need somebody that has evening or weekends or middle of the day appointments? And are they close to you? And can you get there? And all those accessibility kinds of things. So just practical considerations. Okay. But I think on another level, I think it's important to really connect with the person that you're going to work with. It doesn't have to be the be all end all, but you want to feel like this person gets you, You get them, and they're giving you what you need. I mean, you're in a position to make an educated decision about who you want to work with and who you want to invest your time and energy with. And so it should match. Do you want somebody that is going to sort of be a little more reflective and kind of bounce back ideas off of you based on what you're saying? Or do you want somebody that's going to be really active and challenge you and be more action oriented and problem solving? Some people are really more interested in understanding why they're struggling in the way that they're struggling. And some people are really just more interested in figuring out how to fix it.
Sure.
And those are different types of therapies.
Yeah.
The why therapy, we call that insight-oriented therapy, is going to look a little bit more like something called psychodynamic. So you want to look for things like, if that's what you're interested in, insight-oriented work. It's a bit more talking about things that you have dealt with in your past and how those might be affecting you today. A more action-oriented type of therapy, or what we might call a learning-based therapy or an experience-based therapy, usually like a cognitive behavior therapy, it's going to feel a lot more like coaching. So you're going to meet with somebody, you're going to quickly assess kind of what the current problem, the current state of affairs is, and why you're struggling really quickly so you can get to the how. You want to figure out what's happening and then come up with a solution to try and fix it. And it's like a process of iterating. So it's like, all right, let's give this a try. We've kind of put our heads together. We've collaborated about what we believe is happening, or why you're struggling with the anxiety or the depression or the sleeplessness or whatever. Go out and try this, and then come back and tell me how that went. And if it worked, great. And if not, let's figure out why. So the more active, the more work that you're doing outside of those meetings, the more productive those meetings will be.
Sure.
It just depends. And honestly, some people need a little bit of both. And so you can find that in a really integrative way. But the best thing to do is just ask those questions. So when you meet with somebody, ask them, what's your approach like? What can I expect? Here are the things that I would like to be working on. So you want to give some consideration to that. How do I define the problems that I'm having? How do I think they might best be fixed? And why am I having a hard time doing that myself? And you say, here's what I'd like to work on. And work on setting goals. I think that's a really important part of the treatment. So you can measure success.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm glad you shared that, because I think it is important that you do find your match. I had been, it's probably been a while since I've seen a therapist or psychologist. And but I remember being shamed in a session and was like, really? Is this happening? And, of course, that was years ago, so I'm more aware of now. But like, I remember feeling like, you're not even listening to me. It's their own agenda. That I had that experience, unfortunately. And that can happen because everyone's human. And so even when you're in the healing professions, you as yourself have to make sure you're separating whatever you've got going on and you're actually helping someone. But I think it's great that you really shared that about making sure it's a match and you're getting what you want, because I'm sure there's listeners out there who are seeing someone and maybe they're not getting what they want and say things aren't progressing because of different. It doesn't mean that their therapist is bad or anything. It just means that maybe it's not the right fit and they need something else. But you can also get too comfortable. And so having someone who is going to listen or coach or challenge or set goals and things like that may be more helpful.
Right. And I think it's on the therapist as the professional to be checking in with the individual as well. Like, how is this going for you? Like, almost every time you meet. I mean, you can get a sense of that for the most part, but it's not a bad idea to just check in and say, how is this going for you? Are we on the right track? And it opens up, communication. It puts the individual in a position to really reflect and think, like, is this working for me? How is this going? Here's what I thought we were going to be doing, and I didn't want to say anything. So you want that to be a two-way dialogue, but especially the responsibility, the onus of that is on the professional to be making sure that you guys are on the same page.
Of course. And I love, I love the work of Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, which I'll link to his book and everything. And that's where, like, yoga as a therapy and my profession, the body keeps the score. And that title of his book is like everything I believe. And so I really love seeing this integration of psychology and yoga and mind, the whole mind body medicine really exploding. And what are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I love that. I love that we have that in common as well, because I do think there is sort of a paradigm shift in the field. I'd like to see this. I'd like to promote this to the extent that we can, is focusing somewhat on the verbal, on the conversation, on a very, what I would call a top-down approach to mental wellness. But I would love to incorporate much more body work, because I do think so much of what we've experienced and the reason why we struggle in the present is because of things that remain in our body in a very physical way that we can't talk about, that we can't actually access in a way that we can communicate verbally. So it's connecting with things like music, movement, yoga, especially meditation, art, that sort of thing, and connecting to ourselves in a different way that doesn't always require words. Doesn't always require talking about it, because that's really going to we're really only activating one part of the brain when you do that. And we want to activate the entire brain.
Yes.
And our brain isn't entirely always and 100% in our head. It's sort of, we have sensory modalities all over our body. We want to be engaging all of those. We want to have a whole body experience of health and wellness, body, mind, soul, and spirit.
I completely agree. And that's why, and I love working in conjunction rather than feeling like there's this separation, because we all come from different approaches, and the working together and the integration is, it's essential, because I believe in integrative approaches to everyone's healing. Even just yoga practices are not going to necessarily be everything. They're helpful for the long term and daily use and things. I always joke that I have a toolbox and I share these tools and I use them myself. But having other professionals, mental health, whatever, any type of healthcare professionals to assist with these other therapies, but understanding the integration rather than the separation.
And we're all working towards the same goal.
Exactly.
And I love that, because also you have to take into account the individual and where they are in their journey. So there's going to be several people who either can't talk, don't have the words to talk about it, don't want to talk about it, but there's work that they're ready to do, but it's going to be much more of a physical basis or a body work basis. And then once they've healed in some aspects, then they're in a better position to integrate that using words or verbal ability, and being able to work on their narrative, the story that they tell about their life.
Yeah, because it shifts as you release and work on it and things. So that narrative shifts. But, you talk about, we all have the same goal of helping someone heal and feel whole again. And there's just different approaches to that. And it depends what they're open to and ready for. We had the conversation about being ready for some certain things today, which we won't share with everybody, but, that we're both kind of in the similar places on our path. And but we had to go through a lot to be ready for certain things and open to other things, and which is wonderful and magical and things like that. But some people aren't ready to put words to, especially like if you've had traumatic experiences, sometimes you can't physically put words to things. The cognitive mind cannot describe it. And then, so that's where that mind-body medicine approach can help someone get in touch with that, so then they can change their narrative and things like that.
And they can feel safe in their body again. They can be safe. They can feel safe to discuss things that either they weren't ready to, weren't able to. And it's a process. It's like a building block. Everything has to build on a previous experience, and you can't force it. You can't, it has to unfold in its own way.
In its own time. A lot of times we just want a magic pill or
fix it fast
because it's hard to deal with. And that's why we shove emotions down in the first place.
We usually don't deal with it.
So we don't
like,
feel
I don't
it.
want to deal with
but
it.
then
It's
the
too
body's
hard.
like, hey, like the language of the body is pain. So a lot of times that's what I see, because I work a lot with people with chronic pain, and it's like, well, that's just showing something deeper is going on. And that's just your entryway to come to me, because that's that's what I work with.
It's getting your attention.
Yes,
It's gonna
it's
get your
like
attention. Like,
the
hey.
body whispers and then it yells at you
That's
and
right.
screams. It's like, hey, you weren't listening. So the more we really get in tune and start listening to the body, then we're aware of things going on.
And I love the idea of taking care of ourselves sooner.
Yes.
Let's try to prevent a small problem from becoming a bigger problem. Let's pay attention to ourselves and take care of ourselves when we have the opportunity to do that in a very preventative way.
Well, we talked about that just the other day. Rather than waiting until you're burnout, which I've experienced burnout and adrenal fatigue, and that's why I reference that sometimes. And then, of course, those are the clients who come to me. But rather than waiting until you're actually burnt out, recognizing and starting it today as preventative medicine.
Right. So again, it goes back to listening as a daily practice, as part of your self-care. How am I doing today? Where am I on my own internal burnout scale? What do I need to step it up a little bit? Do I need to back down a little bit? And just gauge that for yourself. And we're not in touch with ourselves as much as we think we are. Or we are, but maybe we're not completely honest with ourselves. So it's having a good hard look at ourselves every single day and then adjusting accordingly.
Yeah.
So we don't get to that point where like, I'm done, I'm out.
Yes, exactly.
I'm no good.
Well, and the point of if we're not as in touch, having a professional help guide us to learn how to be in touch, because just learning and whether you've had trauma or not doesn't matter. It's just reassociating with the body and understanding the body. We're not taught that. And so just understanding, just as human beings, the language of the body, listening, how to listen to intuition and things like that, so that we can have that. And sometimes you do need professional help to even figure that out.
We spend a lot of time in our heads, and I call this the cognitive overrides. We kind of know if we're willing to listen, but we can talk ourselves out of things all the time.
Of course.
Or whatever. Yes.
Of course. Well, so I loved having you here. I love spending time with you and chatting about everything. So any other things you want to share? Any final thoughts?
Well, you know what? Thank you so much for having me. I love having these conversations with you, and any opportunity that I get to talk about mental health issues and educating and informing and equipping people with information that they need to take better care of themselves. I'm going to jump at the opportunity to do that. So I thank you so much. And you are a pioneer in the work that you're doing here in Indianapolis, and I'm excited to see everything else that you have going on.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I love you so much. Well, thank you, Natalie, for being on. And for everyone here, we will have links to our show notes, or links to everything we talked about in our show notes. And I know that every guest I have on here, just the story and the insight that they provide to all our listeners is just invaluable. So I hope that this helps all of you out there. One last reminder, this episode is sponsored by Embark Yoga and Holistic Health. It's an urban sanctuary in the heart of Indianapolis, offering yoga classes, massage therapy, and holistic practices rooted in connecting the innate wisdom of the body with the mind to help you find true healing. Through dynamic movement, deep relaxation, natural remedies, and holistic self-care, Embark's team of wellness professionals can help you remain healthy as you age, stay sane while managing stress, and feel good every day of your life. Go to embarkyoga.com to learn more. And one last thing, are you subscribed to my podcast? And if you're not, I encourage you to do so today, so you're the first to hear when the next one is live every Thursday. So take a few seconds, hit the subscribe button on your phone now, or go to alyssafinnig.com/podcast. And make sure you get on the email list to get notified when a new episode is available. I can't wait to see you again. Same time, same place next week. Wild blessings.